Today, I think I may have the honor of talking to Mr. Doublebacknv. He graciously agreed to do a little chat on the stream, so maybe we'll have a little bit of a conversation. And I'm already getting a call. Let's call this guy. Let's see what he's up to. Hello, hello. How are you doing? We never talked before, I think.
I don't think so. We just in chat. We talked about potentially at some point hopping on.
Yeah, I mean this is like my own stream. I still want to get you on the Albion TV, but that's that's not live. That's recorded. You know, that kind of stuff. Make you look good.
Of course, yeah. Cut out all the crazy things I say.
Right. No, I just wanted to say hi. Basically, I saw you streaming more and more recently, and I thought I'd hop in, learn more about you, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I'm happy to say whatever. I mean, for the most part, that's why I stream. It just gives me something to talk about with somebody while I'm grinding econ for how much?
Right. I mean, doing a 15-minute transport and then just having somebody to talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
Is way different.
I basically have only. I mean, I haven't only done econ since I started playing, but it's pretty much all I've done. And we just looked at my hours before this during this stream, and it was like 6,300 hours in the last 22 months. So It's like 9.5 hours a day on average, 7 days a week for almost 2 years of literally just straight econ. Which honestly,
it's a bit much.
When I put it like that, I should have a lot more silver than I do now. But we'll get there.
I mean, if that somehow translates to fulfillment, then whatever. That's good.
Yeah, it just gives me something to. It's more just enjoying the grind necessarily. Like, I don't know. That's mostly like I make videos and everything, and people ask me like why I like. Doesn't that make you make less silver? And I just say like, I don't really care necessarily if I have like 1 trillion or 10 trillion or 500 billion. You know, like it's all arbitrary, especially at the end. So.
I mean, in the end, it's a game, right? And then sometimes it's more about sharing what you do there than just being in your own little corner, in your own little room, counting the billions go up. Yeah. I don't know. What do you want to talk about? I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit, but I don't know how much you've been doing that on stream already.
No, that's fine. I mean, mostly on stream, I just answer like. Is refining without focus worth it? What should I do with 2 million silver? And
oh, we could do that. What's like the top 3 questions people ask you all the time? That's a good one.
The biggest question by far is like some variation of I have X amount of silver, like 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. I want to make silver. What do I do? Like it's very general. Like I have no silver, no premium. How do I make money? Which is fine. I mean, like that's kind of like my entire like YouTube channel is usually what I direct people to that because I have like 100 videos going over everything I did to make silver, and that's easy. And just answering that question 25 times a day. But other than that, a lot of it, I don't know. There's certain things that I do in game. Like I've been refining a bunch of stone blocks as of lately, and I get asked probably like 10 times a day, like, why are you refining stone? I thought stone was terrible, this and that. That happens all the time, I've noticed. So I kind of just out of like fun just do stuff that makes no sense to people. Like I have right now I have a guild chest in or a guild tab in Thetford, literally just full of gathering gear. I have about 1 billion silver in enchanted gathering gear just sitting in a chest.
Nice.
Because I basically spent like 3 months just focus crafting gathering tools. Just because I would get like 10 times a day. Like, why are you making tools? What are you doing? This looks ridiculous.
I mean, it kind of does, but I used to answer that question like, is it your first month? If yes, then spend $10. That's what I used to answer them.
Yeah.
To get the initial premium, but I mean, did your answer change over time?
That's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what my answer at the beginning, like a big question I get all the time is like, is non-focus refining worth it? And I used to always say like, yes, for sure. Like when the premium was lower, I was like, if you enjoy doing it, like go for it. Because if you do it a lot, you can easily get premium in like a week doing that. One sec, I'm trying to go to an island and my push to talk button like messes it up so I can't teleport.
Oh, you have push to talk on? Okay.
Yeah, I have push talk just so I can talk to the stream without like talking to you and vice versa. But yeah, nowadays I've mostly just I've started doing more like black market transporting, and that's usually what I recommend most people do if they just want like fast silver. I used to, I don't know, back when I was non-focus refining, I had a friend Setsu that would always go like, "Why don't you use black market transport? It's like 10 times the silver you're making now." And I was always stubborn. I was like, "No, refining's fine. I'm fine."
What changed your mind?
But
By the way, if you want to just keep the non-push to talk and just talk to your stream, that's fine. I don't mind. I have like I don't really stream for the big YouTubes and the big people like you do, right? I'm just starting this with a similar thing where I just don't want to be alone transporting.
Yeah,
So.
fair. It honestly, like, you do it for like 1,000 hours, and you're like, well, I've looked at this tree one too many times, and I'm going insane. And I don't know, something about, I personally just don't really like. I have a very hard time getting along with people, and it's gotten me in a lot of trouble with like Discord messages as far as like,
What do you mean
I don't know,
getting
it's like
along with
ghosting,
people?
but just like not answering people and stuff. Like,
Oh, all right, I see. Well,
I don't know what
answering is
like.
different.
I don't. And like, I don't answer the phone. I never call anybody on the phone. I hate messaging people on Discord and stuff like that. Something about streaming, I don't know. It's not. I don't know if it's just because people are like chatting to me and I can talk back rather than like typing. I don't know what it. I don't. It seems backwards. Like, you'd think it'd be easier to like type to somebody than to like talk like on webcam to like hundreds of people, but
I mean, at the end of the day, you can still like pick yourself how you engage, right? So if there's some random dude who's spamming in chat, then you can just be like, yeah, maybe I just skip you, right? And that's not something you can do with people that sit next to you, kind of. How about you shut up? Wait, what?
yeah. I don't. The in-person thing, yeah, it's completely. I don't even bring that up because to me, that's like, I just never talk to anybody in real life. I'm the type of like, I was just talking to them earlier on stream. Like, I go to the gym, it's like baseball cap on, hoodie over the hat, headphones over the hoodie, like looking at the floor, like as unapproachable as possible. But I don't know, it's a nice change of pace.
My guy. I mean, streaming is a nice outlet in that sense, but let's talk about Albion. How about that?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think you might be one of the guys on who's streaming and like sort of a public figure who's running, I think, the most accounts I know of right now. Do you know anybody who's doing more, like just brute volume?
Even outside of refining, like, I don't know anybody. That refining is the one thing where, like, if there was somebody running this many accounts, it would probably be refining, because especially with the Blackstone crafting, there's no reason to really run alts with crafting, and I don't think many people do. I have no idea of anybody that refines more than I do. Right now, I'm going through about 1 billion silver a day in finished material. I don't know anybody who's like even close to that.
Wait, a billion with a B?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a billion per day, and I'm doing off of that. Some of it is non-focus refining, which is closer to like 10% profit after taxes, and then most of my focus refining is 0.3s between 10 and 15%. So I'm going through about 1 billion mats every single day, and that makes me around 100 million per day in profit.
So like 10% margin on the stuff you do?
Yeah, 10% margin after taxes, and that's just the 100 million profit is just the focus alts based on like the market prices and like the calculations that I've done for my focus points. Anything on top of that, as far as non-focus refining, I don't really track that.
Still a healthy amount. It's still a good number. I like it.
Yeah. It's...
I used to be. I actually never went to that point in terms of the amount of accounts. But I like my Albion time was like the big high time was like 2 years ago, I think, where I had like the biggest size and the biggest volume and throughput and all that stuff. And the last year was kind of quiet. So right now I'm starting back up, but like econ has always been near and dear to my heart, and it's like finally somebody representing econ. I don't know. I have to be honest. You kind of inspired me a little bit to go like, hey, why not stream this? Like people might actually like it, and I think people do, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's definitely like definitely the minority of players, but it's not a small amount by any means. And you think about it, even if only like, say, even if only 10% of the people watching Albion are interested in econ, the thing is that there's so few econ players that you're competing with basically nobody for viewership on econ.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like anybody interested in PvP, you know, you could click on like any stream and watch that.
I see. I mean, that's on Twitch and YouTube though, right? But in game,
Yeah,
I
as
think
far as
there's
like
plenty of
content
people.
creator and just like I mean, even just teaching people, like not even necessarily like it has to be like monetized content. Just like literally just teaching people in general. Like I even to this day, 2 years later, I don't know anybody that covers focus refining on YouTube. And definitely nobody did back when I started. There was
No.
Burnstone TV did like non-focus refining, like tier
Mm-hmm.
3, tier 4, and that's kind of what like gave me the idea to do it. And it just scaled from there. But even to this day, I don't really know anybody that strictly um does econ as a profession and like in the like public eye, I suppose, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I think there's plenty of people who are sort of hiding in the shadows a little bit, right? Who actually run tons of accounts and plenty of volume every day. But in Albion, it's always that thing where if you share your information, sometimes people will copy it, and especially
Yeah.
if you do it on YouTube, then more and more people will copy it, and then
Mhm.
it runs the danger of ruining your margins. Did you ever find that, or is that not your concern? Is that can you still do
I'm not
whatever you do?
yeah, I'm not really that concerned about it. Also, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is that I always try to talk about is just like the sheer quantity or the sheer size of the resource market, like finished material in general.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just out of curiosity went through and added up just the Royal City, like based on average like sale volumes per day at the like average price for that month. Just the in-game Royal, so not counting Carlian, not counting like Discord sales, not counting personal refiners or anything that like refine their own resources, just strictly items sold on the market. Just leather alone, which I just got into, was 800 to 900 billion per month in materials. So like
But that's both
at,
sides, right? That's sell and buy.
that's
So
no,
that's
well
just volume, right?
that's just volume, yeah, just
Yeah. Okay.
volume on the market. So not all of that is refined. Obviously, like somebody could buy it in one city, sell it in another. Somebody could get it from journals and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's to show, like, yes, I'm doing like 1 billion silver a day in mats, which has some downwards pressure on the market. But the amount of people that would have to do like the quantity that I do to actually drop the price, because then you run into the thing is like if the price drops too far, then it becomes incredibly profitable to craft, right? So
Yeah.
then you get upwards pressure from crafters, and like as far as where the supply and demand would push it to, I'm not sure. It's I would say focus refining is definitely less profitable now than it was when I started. Not all of that is because of the premium cost. It is slightly when I started focus refining bars. I think profit on like 8.3 was between 200 to 250 silver per focus. It's only about 150 now.
That's
So, and then I
300 is a
mean,
lot. Yeah. 200 is still
yeah,
good. And 150 still. I mean, would you say that's the upper range then of what bar
for
refining
bars,
pays?
yes.
Yeah.
For other resources, you can get a lot higher with leather, especially
Mm-hmm.
leather. The sheer demand for leather is insane compared to every other resource. I wouldn't be surprised if it pushes like as far as like silver quantity, if it pushes like bars and planks combined in total, and leather would probably still be bigger, just because you think. If you look at every player needs a cape, every player needs a bag. The vast majority of the meta is leather armor. So
Really? The vast majority. In terms of solo?
in terms of like yeah, I would say in terms of like what people are dying in, you see a lot of leather shoes, you
Mm-hmm.
see a ton of Hellion jackets, mercenary
Right,
jackets,
right.
stuff like that is very common in 1v1. So the actual players are using leather as well as just bags and capes in general,
Where
which
do you get that information from? Like, where are you just looking at the kill board, or do you have friends who literally
pretty
scrape
much
the kill
yeah,
board?
just people in chat experiencing with the meta
Mm-hmm.
and just looking at kill boards and stuff like that, or just in general, like most people I've seen um like Hellion Jacket, just watching videos, watching other content, corrupted dungeons, stuff like that. Hellion Jacket, mercenary jacket, and stuff like that's incredibly common. And I just
I
kind of
used to.
extrapolate that out. I don't have like data on it in particular.
There's actually some people who literally scrape the kill board, like the website, and do a tally of the most common deaths basically, and just enumerate that and look at the what sets, what's weapons, what armors trash the most.
I mean, that's hugely, like, if you want to get into econ, I mean, that can point you in the right direction very quickly as far as what to craft.
And following the meta, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, because even if you're not making, like, you might actually make less profit doing that because it might be an oversaturated market. But I've noticed the more and more that I get into this, like, liquidity is way more, like, being able to sell the item quickly is much more important than how much profit you get within reason.
I used to be happy to run like 5-10% margins just if that meant I can get the sale on a day or two later. Like I was super happy about just getting rid of inventory all the time versus just being stuck with a sell order that was stuck on the market for like I don't know, 3 weeks or something. That always felt so bad for some reason.
100%, especially if you're only dealing with, I mean, it kind of, the premium price increase really sucked in general for me because I was just scaling into the point where like liquidity was like a non-existent problem. Like I had so much surplus on top of like my premium purchases and stuff like that. And then as soon as I was getting up there to liquidity, boom, premium price doubled.
Oh no.
And then it just basically I had like grinded up for like 6 months to get enough liquidity to the point where I was finally like feeling like incredibly comfortable, like not worried about like items selling, and then boom, shot back down. And a lot of people are like, the main problem with the premium price going up isn't even necessarily like I can't make the same amount of profit. Like I can very easily make the same amount of profit per month, but the issue is I did bars, and bars have a very low price. So the difference between a non-focus refined bar and a focus refined bar is much, much smaller. It basically has like a theoretical maximum profit per focus, because if it goes above a certain silver per focus, then it becomes non-focus refinable. Right. So I'm kind of like bottlenecked by demand. And basically what that meant is I was forced in. I used to refine a ton of tier 6 and tier 7 bars with focus, and I just can't do that anymore because those tiers are just bottlenecked to the point where they will never become profitable to focus refine, because if they are, they can be non-focus refined.
That's so the margin's just stuck. It's kind of against what you assume focus would do to the system.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I had honestly, because I had thought, okay, premium goes up. I'm like, well, that's fine. Like premium goes up, the silver per focus will go up. Like materials will just become more expensive, right? Because of input cost. And that was a huge oversight in
I didn't realize that too. Like I only recently figured that out as well, that some tiers are only exist in mass and in such huge quantities that actually attempting to focus refine doesn't do it anymore. And then the whole market just adjusts to that level just purely based on silver per focus cost that you want to achieve, right? Because you, in the end, if you're somebody like you, then your goal is to at least break even, right, for premium cost. And in that sense, it's a weird phenomenon that I
like you said, I did not see that at all until it was too late, until the point where the market basically just collapsed. Because basically my thought is that a lot of that stuff, especially like 6.0, I don't think it was being focused. I don't think 6.0 was being focus refined at all anyways. I think the vast majority of it comes from journals. The vast majority of it's being non-focus refined. And I was just kind of like, I was putting some downwards pressure on the margin, but it wasn't that bad. And the problem is like demand stayed the same for bars with the increased premium for the most part. Bars is mostly just black market demand, and some like tanks need it for armor and stuff like that. But mostly it's just what the black market will pay. Black market didn't change its price. So demand stayed the same. And then you basically just saw I was spending about 30 silver per focus, and I was making about 60, 70. And then the premium price doubled to where I was spending about 60, but demand didn't change. So the profit stayed at 60. There was no upwards pressure on it because it was being non-focus refined at that price regardless.
So just let them run out then at the end, or how did you?
No, basically, that was the thing I was harping back to with the liquidity, is I just have to refine higher tier stuff now.
Right.
So I went from refining maybe 300, 400 million in a refining session to now doing 1.2, 1.5 billion in a refining session to make the same amount of silver, because the vast majority of that extra gain is just going towards.
Right. You just have, so you have higher throughput costs, and that like sucks up all your liquidity into higher. Yep. Right. I see.
And like I said, it's okay that it happened when it did, because I was at the point where my liquidity was solid. So it didn't like, I did shut down about 30 of the 102 bar accounts I had, just because selling that amount of like 6.3, 7.3, 8.3 just becomes ridiculous.
Who did you sell it to? Is it all just
I only sell in the in-game market. I don't use Discord. I don't sell to guilds, alliances, anything. I simply just do in-game markets. Mostly that's just because like I would not turn away from like trying to sell a bulk amount of stuff to a guild. But I think the main thing is just like most guilds already have a supplier, especially if it's high tier stuff like that, because they'd be leaving so much profit on the table not to have their own. And on top of that, yes, you could sell to Discord and avoid taxes, but the vast majority of Discord purchases I saw were in the ballpark of like 10 to 20 mil orders.
Oh yeah,
and when you're doing 1.5 billion a day, like I can't sit there and sell to 60 different people.
I have a similar problem, right? I like it's at some point if you're dealing with super high like volume every day, then you have to optimize that out of your daily routine, where you can't deal with meagerly 5 million purchases anymore, where it's like the actual margin on 5 million or 10 million is 10%, maybe 5% if you count the time. And then
so you're spending probably minimum, even if the guy's fast, you're spending 3, 4, 5 minutes just to make 500k, which at that scale just doesn't make sense to commit that amount of time. And then they could be slow and you could go 10 minutes just to make 1 million silver or whatever, which I could make more than that literally just refining new stuff while I wait. So just throw it on the market and go make more, basically, is my mindset right now.
I think there must be a cap somewhere. I don't know. I feel like there is a few individuals who have like large percentage volumes of the market, and I feel like you're moving into some of these into these areas, and I don't know how much growth there is. Did you ever think about that? How much you really want to grow in that sense, or is like, okay, 200 is enough or 300 is enough?
As far as
like accounts, I don't know.
Accounts, I would say, with the amount of time I'm committing to it now, it depends as far as if I want to stay solo. Because
so it comes down to your personal time then.
Yeah, the easiest thing I could do is just I would say it takes me roughly 6 hours every 3 days just to run the alts themselves, as far as buy orders, transporting, refining, selling, just to run the alts. And then the rest of the time goes into non-focus refining or making new accounts in general. And that's with about right now 180 refiners. So I could scale it up to say 300, 350, and you'd probably be looking at, well, say I have to do a couple extra mammoth transports. So you look at 4 or 5 hours a day. That becomes pretty unfeasible, right? Like literally spending 5 hours of your day, 7 days a week, just managing what you already have. I think burnout on something like that would be insane. But on top of that,
professional streamer, I don't know, but
I have content that I could make out of it. So yeah, I mean, there is incentive to do that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I would say 65-75% of my time goes to transporting the raw materials.
I see.
So best thing to do is literally just pay somebody else to move it for me while I focus refine, which is easy because now I'm doing bars and leather. So I could go focus refine bars, set up the leather or the hide transport, be like, okay, move this hide here for me, do all my bar refining. And then by the time I'm done bar refining, hide's there ready to go. I go focus refine hide and I just pay him to sell it for me or haul it there to sell. I don't know if I would haul the finished material, just because a lot of the silver from that comes from transmuting. So like he could haul me maybe like 200, 300 mil in raw material, and then the rest of the value, that like 1 million per day I was talking about, is from transmuting. I wouldn't feel comfortable having somebody move that amount of silver without collateral, and I just don't think there's very many people that would move 1 billion silver or like put up 1 billion silver in collateral to move raw material. If you have that amount of silver, you're not transporting for somebody else for like 3 mil an hour.
I was always hoping, I think that's something I posted on like the forums in 2017 or something, maybe 15. It's like, hey, transport contracts. How about that? Other games do that
Yeah,
too.
100%. That would free up so much economic value in the market as far as just like for me, I could make. I tell the stream all the time, like literally, if I didn't want to do any of the complex stuff I'm doing right now, I could literally just non-focus refine like tier 3 and tier 4 and make like 6 million silver an hour with relatively ease or relative ease. But the thing is, like transporting that stuff isn't worth my time. But I could pay somebody else 1 million, 2 million silver per hour to move it for me, and then
But wouldn't then
just
everybody
refine it.
just do it? And then
Yeah, it would like
in
there
Albion
definitely is an
sometimes.
argument that like the margin would just shrink,
Yeah,
right?
of
And it
course.
wouldn't be worth it as much. But and that gets into like I'm not well versed in like statistics in general
Oh,
and
me neither.
economics. So
I'm
yeah, I couldn't tell you like because a big argument I make for like gatherers can't make much silver. So I'm like, what if you like doubled the resource respawn rate of raw material, right? So gatherers make more silver and refiners have more material to refine or whatever, and the market just moves faster. But it's like as because there's also the argument like if you doubled the amount of resources coming into the game, what if the resource price just halves and you're right back where you started, but now you have all this mats laying around? So
yeah, I don't know. There's this weird thing in Albion about economic and the market efficiency, where I feel like some of it is per design, right? It's purposefully built that way. And I like people who do big scale and large volume always want these quality of life things, right? You want the market orders adjusted. You want maybe a higher stack size. You want maybe transport contracts. All these things that help you to manage like large volume quicker. But like imagine if we had like a 9,000 tier 3 stack size, for example. Would that push new players out in a sense where your time or your silver per click or your silver per hour sort of gets eaten up by higher, more richer players? Have you
yeah,
ever thought about that?
100%. One of the best ways to make silver, or one of the things I did when I only had probably like 5 billion or whatever, that literally I would just sit there and I would roll artifacts in town on like 5 accounts at the same time, like 3 clicks per second, just rolling artifacts on all those accounts at once. And I've had other people talk about rolling artifacts, and this is just like an example of what you're going over if I didn't clarify that at the start. But I've had a lot of people who also roll artifacts, and they're like, man, what if you could just like go to the artifact foundry and just like click once and have it just like green bar roll every artifact like at once, so you didn't have to like sit there and spam click. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like the fact that you have to spam click is why it's profitable. Like there is like economic value in difficulty, right? And like you said, like if people like me could just haul vast amounts more of tier 3 compared to other materials, then yeah, the margin would just shrink. And if you weren't somebody that had a mammoth that could haul vast amounts of resources, then yeah, you'd just be priced out.
It's so awkward. Like on the one hand, you kind of want that the game to have that how to say flexibility for the game, right? Where you're like, I want this quality of life and I want this to be working like that, because it's at the end of the day, it's annoying for you as somebody who has that time spent and the knowledge and stuff. And then it makes certain aspects of like end game a little less fun. But as there's this weird trade-off where I don't know, there should be a middle ground, and I think some of the quality of life stuff still has a higher weight though. Like some
Yeah.
things could be better.
Yeah, you could definitely make things easier, and like I think it would like yes, you might make less silver if it was easier, but there are plenty of things that I think yeah, the vast majority of players would be willing to part with that value in order to make things less complicated, intrusive, or whatever. Like one of the biggest things for me is just the marketplace in general. The fact that if you like, I have at any given time upwards of 40, 50,000 completed transactions on the market just waiting to be pulled off the market.
Wait, on one market?
No, like total across all the royal cities. I usually have like 20,000 in Bridgewatch, like 10,000 in Limhurst, and then some in the other cities I don't buy as much of. But like I'm at like I would say it takes me ballpark every 10,000 like 20 to 30 minutes per 10,000, literally just sitting there watching them, like clicking collect all and just sitting there and staring at the market, right? Just watching it collect.
Oh yeah.
So it's like there's definitely to say, like, yes, you would probably make less profit if you could just click collect all and have it actually like collect all. It just instantly went into your inventory, right? Like if it like stacked it up in the market and you could like take stacks off the market rather than doing 10,000 one item transactions. But I would definitely make that trade-off, right? If I could just take it all off the market and not have to sit there for like, yes, I might make more silver wasting 30 minutes of my life watching the completed transaction page move, but
and just using it as an alt to put the buy address is not viable.
I mean, it is. I could, but at that point, I just
you have to do the inventory management.
In my mind, yeah, the inventory management, the difficulty of managing the inventories across multiple accounts like exponentially increases.
Yeah,
and I just feel like it increased my chance of like accidentally losing silver.
Oh yeah. That's
Just
the worst feeling.
One account.
If you like lose or like misplay stuff, and you're like, wait a second, where did I put this 500 tier 8 bars now? Oh god, I gotta log through all of them. Yikes. Yeah. Oh well. I'm actually also doing some transporting right now. I'm moving some random stuff from Bridgewatch to Limhurst. I'm doing some cloth refining on my end. I'm doing this experiment. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about market manipulation power? Like, how much power do you have with your buying power to just, for example, force a price? Or
my buying power in silver right now, if I could buy up the entire supply of gold on the gold market, every single piece of gold off the gold market. If I had my silver in liquid, once. Obviously, the price would change. Like that's just it. Like I could literally spike the gold price up from 5,000 to 15,000, like just snapping my fingers.
Of course, but how long would you think that would stay there?
No, that on a big market like that, irrelevant.
Right.
Like it would very quickly drop back down. But I mean, if you look at smaller volume, more liquid markets, I mean, you could buy up the entire stock of some items, like, or the biggest thing that makes a lot of people mad is like just the fact that like my amount of silver could buy up, like I'm getting to the point now where if I double or triple my net worth, which I could reasonably do this year, I'll have enough silver to buy up every single plot in the entire game for a month. Right? Like when you get into that amount of buying power, like obviously again, that's still temporary. You'd only own it for a month. But imagine how much economic damage you could cause to the game if, for example, somebody with 100 billion silver buys up every single plot in every single royal city and makes them all private.
I mean, so I think most of the damage will be to your own wallet. To be fair.
Yeah. It wouldn't necessarily cause economic damage to other players. I guess it's a bad term. Just the inconvenience, or like you said, like
I think I've thought about that a few times. So I think what would happen actually is that a few people would just open their guild islands, and there's plenty who have them, and then a lot of supply that's just sitting around in people's boxes would get started to like liquidate it, and then that 1 month of everything being private would annoy a lot of people, and it would be content, right? It would be content for the game. And it would force people to adjust. But I think the 1 month is too short to, properly deal damage, other than, remember that time when that happened.
Yeah. I don't think so. What are you thinking more? Are you asking more about like long term? Like
for example, I'm basically considering. So it's a little bit from like market making, that idea, where you own both sides of the thing and just buy up both sides as much as possible, and you sort of set a price. And I'm wondering whether or not you feel like that's a thing that's either worth it, or that's fun, or if that's even possible. Because I've tried, for example, the tier 5 pop market for the Sabertooth pops, and I just tried to buy all of them. And then sell everything I bought with a 5% margin, and then just lock in that spread, basically, where you just get you just buy everything, sell everything, and then make your money on the spread, not on the rest. And I got totally owned by the supply. Like there was just so much coming in that I couldn't keep up, and after I was like 500 million deep, I was like, maybe this is too much volume. I underestimated this.
Yeah. But that probably harps back to the same thing you said. Like if they see any ounce of economic potential, like even if it's just as simple as somebody had a bunch of them sitting on their island that they just hadn't sold, like eventually it'll get out. Even if one person sees it and they tell somebody, like eventually, like hidden supply is going to pop up out of nowhere. And I've noticed that especially with like commodity items, which mostly is what Albion items are. Like they're all identical, right? So there's no difference between one tier 6 bar and another tier 6 bar. Like and there's also, they just kind of yours is a little different because it doesn't, like, obviously like a tier 6 bar, like people with tier 6 ore can refine it or journals, and there's so much that feeds into that would be almost impossible to affect. But with yours, I don't know, like I feel like without any sort of other outside demand, like if you are both sides of the market, the price doesn't really move, and you can't really, especially with any like large stock, like
I mean,
there's one.
the idea is that you basically have a market where you can estimate supply, right? Let's say you're sort of knowledgeable about what volume you have on tier 7 or tier 6 ore, for example, and then you sort of also know what your price ceiling is because of transmutation. And then you sort of maneuver the price somewhere there where you're actually dealing with real supply. And then you're just buying all of that supply at a price point where you just hit all of the demand, right? And then you have to run quite a big volume of goods that you store, because you have these swings of where you were selling off and you're buying again, basically around that equilibrium point of what the market does.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought about that as a fun experiment where you always buy below equilibrium and sell above, essentially.
I think there definitely is things like that in Albion for sure. Especially, like, I've noticed that especially with like the black market. Like it seems like the black market likes to hover around a certain price. Like there's kind of like a built. I don't know if it's like necessarily the black market or if it's just like player input. Like below a certain price, people stop crafting it. Above a certain price, people stop selling, or
I mean,
vice
it would
versa,
be
I guess.
directly related to player numbers in theory, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the black market would like be influenced by the number of people like collecting drops and stuff like that. But you definitely can notice that where like if you buy at a certain price, like below a certain price, you basically never lose silver, and if you sell it above a certain price, you make a bunch. And there's kind of like you said, like an equilibrium price that you can kind of like swing trade.
Yeah, I was just curious if you had made any of these observations on especially ore, since you've been trading that, and whether or not you think that's a viable strategy in the game of okay, I have, let's say you really have 100 billion liquid. Like, would you feel comfortable and saying, okay, I'm just blindly buy up all the supply at X and sell it above, and then if you have a whole structure behind that where you also utilize and refine that raw stuff and then sells that
well,
so
the refining one's an easy question to answer just because there's literally baked in swings in demand for resources, because it's very simple. Just stock, like I've never seen tier 6 ore, for example, drop below like 600 silver, 700 silver, right? So I buy any tier 6 ore I find below 700 and just stockpile it until there's a daily production bonus. And then there's an instant predictable spike in demand where you can liquidate basically all of that ore. And if you can't sell it to other players who want to refine on the daily bonus, you can just turn it into bars and liquidate it both ways. So that's simple. You could very easily swing trade raw material just through daily production bonuses. Just buy 5-10 billion every single resource, wait for bonuses, and then if you get a 20% daily production bonus, you can turn 10 billion into a 3 billion profit immediately. And you definitely need like capacity on plots and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Is like if you basically would need infrastructure of like 5 to 10 plots ready just for that one day, once a month or something, and then maybe it doesn't happen in a month, and then you're stuck with like a 3-4 month project where you're
not just that. I mean, if you have 5 plots, you're stuck with probably minimum like a 250 mil loss. For each resource that you're camping like that.
But I mean, that's the scale of stuff I'm interested in, right? That's the stuff I find fun, but it's really hard to pull off because not a lot of people have that kind of infrastructure. Like not a lot of people have a casual 100 alts to just utilize the or yourself if there's a bad streak or that kind of capital at all.
Yeah.
But
I mean, another thing
I
is
want to
like
pull this
you can
off
also
somehow.
you can also scale it up to the point where say you have a bunch of like 6 or something like that, or you have every resource, right? And you don't just swing trade the material, you also swing trade crafting. So like if you have a bunch of 6-0 ore, right, and you're waiting for an ore bonus, but you don't get an ore bonus, but you get a 20% plate bonus, then you just refine like 2 billion of the bars into bars and you go take it and you craft it into plates instead. And if you do that, if you do the crafting and refining side with the raw material, I don't see how you would ever have like dry spells to the point where you wouldn't be able to take advantage of your plots.
I like that idea so much. I don't know. I've been trying to talk to people about that, but nobody really understands it. And people are just like, "What are you talking about?" I just buy a stack and sell a stack, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, especially if you have a small amount of like that's actually why I would seriously like if I've actually been talking about this on stream a lot recently, and if there's one thing that I could say to SBI, it would be to honestly consider taking daily production bonus out of the game. Because, like you said, like imagine you're somebody that only has 10 million silver. You're like, you're just. It also harps back to like you said, like newer players just get pushed out and priced out of the market. Because if you and rich players take over, if you have somebody with 100 billion silver that can literally afford to just sit there with 100 billion mats waiting for the daily bonus and then just overwhelm the market in demand of all of these mats, then they're just going to kill the margin for that item unless there is another daily bonus, right? So like, but what if you're a player, like a new player that only has 10 million silver? You can't sit there with 10 million silver and wait 2 months for a daily bonus just to profit 3 million, right? Like the time doesn't make sense.
Of course. I mean, then, we have to be realistic and say basically, I don't think this is happening on a grand scale. I don't think, but no, I think it's a theoretical sort of idea.
Well, also you also have to take into account, like, I don't think it's one person sitting there with 100 billion mats. I think it's 1,000 people sitting there with 500,000 in mats.
Yeah. I just think it's an interesting experiment, and it's a result of basically a mature game, right? Where people understand how the systems work, and also where a lot of max spec accounts exist that are able to deal with that size of the market. But I still want to try and pull that off somehow. I still want to be the first to own a whole market somehow. And I don't know, if you had to choose a market that you want to own or that you want to control, what would you pick? Is that, or are you like secretly working on something that you wouldn't want to share?
I mean, I do secretly have plans in the future.
Okay, then.
But it's nothing that I can't share. I mean, realistically, like capturing, like doing what you just said on a scale with a resource. And I'm sure we can talk about this more. I don't want to be too specific. We can talk about it more off stream. But like, if you buy, 10 billion, 20 billion silver of a certain resource, and then suddenly, theoretically, say you're the only person in the game that can refine said resource, there is a percentage difference between what you will like minimum profit, basically. And if you have enough material stockpiled up ahead of time, like all you would have to do is have enough material stocked up ahead of time to where that percentage price difference, so like the caked in like profit difference, outweighs whatever initial like capital you'd have to invest to like make that happen.
Did you ever map that out? Like estimate?
Yeah, I know exactly what the percentage difference is.
No, in terms of capital that you would want to
capital
hold.
That you would need.
Yeah.
I mean, just quickly off the top of my head, based on the profit percent, like minimum profit percentage, you'd probably want. I mean, it also depends because like you're not gonna like basically you don't need the entire capital up front. You have to also take into account how much of it will sell per day, because you can have like a revolving credit basically throughout the entire time frame. You don't have to have it all up front, but I would say you'd probably minimum want 50, 60 bill.
I mean, that's possible, right?
Yeah, 100% it's possible. It would be very you'd have to have somebody time committed, because you can't just sit there passively on your hands and make that profit, right? You have to actually be actively investing it into into material and taking advantage of your, like basically just rushing your advantage as much as you can in the time allotment. But
so when are we doing this then?
when are we doing? I mean, I honestly, I've unironically been working at that for about like 18 months.
Cool.
Is when I first had that idea, and I've talked to plenty of people. It's actually what my alliance tag is based on that I've had for like almost a year at this point. And it's not even necessarily like, it wouldn't even necessarily matter if it was public, because like it doesn't have to be in one particular spot. Like you said, like would there be a certain resource or a certain market that you'd want to do that in? It doesn't have to really be a certain market. There's plenty of markets in the game that's big enough to the point where you could keep them guessing. Plus, they don't know when you're going to do it, right? So you can always keep like the execution of it hidden.
Right. Huh, that's such a fun topic. I kind of want to ask more about like specifics, but I don't want to like ruin your plan. I don't like, how would you go about it? Is it literally just doing all the work over many months, getting the alts prepped or the capital ready, and then
basically having, I mean, I would consider alts as capital. I say that a lot. Like alts are basically just machinery. Like I imagine like if you look at like just production in real life, right? You have land, labor, capital, and you basically need as much of all three of those as you can. Labor, I really realistically think you just need transporters, like moving the resources, the movement of materials between the different bonuses, like going from a cheap area to the bonus area. That is by far the most time consuming part. So you'd have to have people working with you, for you, whatever you want to call it, like dedicated mammoths moving mats for you. Other than that, land, you can obviously guess what I mean by land. And then capital, right? Like you said, alt accounts, resources on standby, whether the capital just be supply ready to go, or for the most part silver. The resource size of the game is so high that, especially with transmuting above a certain tier, you can basically get infinite of a resource, right?
I mean,
if you want
transmuting caps you out though, right? So that's what I find the tricky part, is that for transmuting or raw resources specifically, that you're like capped on the top side, and that you basically have, you can't scale it indefinitely, but you have that range of what you have to operate in the end, just because of transmuting.
Yeah. I mean, there is to say like obviously you can transmute infinite amounts of 8.4, and a hugely large capital intensive process, because a stack of 8.4 is like 1.2 billion silver. So one mammoth of 8.4 would be over 50 billion, but you never sell that amount. So you kind of have a sweet spot between, you can only transmute tier 7 equivalent up. So really your only spot as far as transmuting goes is like tier 8 and tier 9, right? Like 7.1, 6.2, 5.3, 6.3, 8.1, stuff like that is really all you can get infinite of, that I would say would realistically buy. But I think that those areas, especially like 6.2, 5.3, 7.1, 8.0, 8.1, stuff like that, are incredibly demanded by ZVZs, right? Like the average ZVZ fight has ballpark like 200 deaths, it will say. And the vast majority of those deaths are tier 8 equivalent gears. So the demand for transmutable tiers like that, I think, is high enough to the point where, like I said, I have all the prices for like the amount of resources sold on the markets every day. So I have a very good idea based on, like I said, I told you there's an X amount of percentage you can make arbitraging the price difference of the market. And if you were to capture even, I don't know, you'd have to figure out how much of it you could actually sell, but below a certain price, literally nobody could outcompete you. So you would basically, for all intents and purposes, outside of journals or people just selling for a loss, you would be the market.
Right. So, that's what I want to. That's what I want. That's what I want.
Yeah. 100%. That's doable. And I would be like, at this point, I have it all fairly flushed out, and it's fair. Like the risk to it is fairly minimal. Outside of like, because you're not really committing all that much capital to it as far as beforehand, right? Like in order to set it up, you don't need all that much capital. You just need a lot of capital, like I said, revolving capital going through the materials. The biggest investment is just the time, right? Like I said, finding people to transport resources for you, and processing them yourself, because you can't just rely on somebody else. Like I said, you can't. Just to go into a little bit of specifics, like I think the biggest mistake plot owners make is that they buy a plot and they expect to make all of their silver back off that plot just from people paying them tax.
Oh yeah, no.
and I look at them and say, like, if somebody is paying you tax to use your plot, that means that they're making more profit than they're paying you, or at least the vast majority of them are, right?
Yeah.
So you are doing something wrong if you are buying a bunch of plots up and not using them at all and expecting to make back what you did.
You're right. The way you make profit with plots is by utilizing them yourself. Like
exactly.
I don't 10, 15 or so is what I think is reasonable in terms of utilization alts per plot. And then I don't know what you think. How many alts you need to run a plot profitably?
If you're focused refining and you want to run through an entire, it takes about 30 to 40 alts to run through an entire plot of crafting capacity. So if you do it every day, yeah, it's about 10 to 15. I wouldn't do that personally, just because I would rather only have to do it once every 3 days rather than doing like 10 accounts today, 10 accounts tomorrow, 10 accounts, and doing 10 every day. I feel like that just burns you out more.
I think we talked about that on stream a little bit, but I think the overflow, the focus overflow is a little bit of a tricky part. And I think you might lose a lot of money, and I think your goal would be to do it every 2 days, realistically. And then you sort of need a buffer as well, where, real life gets in the way or whatever, or game gets in the way for some reason.
Yeah. Well, that's my main thing. Like, outside of getting struck by lightning, catching some crippling illness, or like falling into a coma, I have literally played this game for 22 months straight, 9.5 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week.
Why? Okay, anyway.
I really don't know. I honestly don't. That is a story for another time. That is something I need to talk to a
psychologist. Anyway,
a psychologist, a professional about. But that's just, I can give you the numbers. I can't give you the reasoning.
Right. I've been in a similar spot 2 years ago, so I know what you're going through, and it's fun, especially if you're successful. Like if suddenly stuff clicks and suddenly stuff works out, right? And you're looking at the market and like, hey, actually, I know why this is happening, and maybe this is me, or I know why this is 5% here, 10% there, or I know why this is like an 8,000 silver price point. I exactly know why, and suddenly it's fun, right? It's a weird kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird. And a lot of people, like, you can see it in, like, I hear this all the time on EVE Online, and I kind of bring it to Albion. It's like people will try to, like, just for an example, I'm not sure how many people try to do this, but like people see, like, they'll buff a weapon, right? And people will like rush to invest in that weapon because they're like, oh, they buffed it, it's gonna get bought, I'm gonna make a bunch of silver off of it. Not realizing that maybe that'll work in the short term, but like the underlying price of an item is based on its material cost. It has absolutely nothing to do with how good that weapon is. How good that weapon is will determine how many of them you can sell per day, but it has absolutely no effect on the price. The price is determined by the material cost to make it, plus like the time and difficulty, basically. And people see that in EVE Online all the time, where like they'll buff a ship in EVE Online and people rush in to buy that ship. But EVE Online is just at a bigger scale to where like the the ships and all that stuff in EVE cost so many more resources compared to Albion, where it's like, I could go right now and make 20,000 of a certain gear type, right? Like the material investment in this is fairly simple, which is why I don't think you see as big of price swings on gear. Because even if the gear gets buffed, like somebody can very quickly, in like 30 minutes, they could go craft 100,000 of that item and flood it on the market. But people don't really
wait, 30 minutes? Yeah, okay, you're talking T4 or something, right? Yeah.
Well, if you already have the mats available,
of course, yeah. Okay, so we got to work on that plan then, I assume. Okay.
Yeah, I'm done. I mean, like, I guess somebody in chat asked you, and I was gonna, like, how much liquidity, or not liquidity? I don't know. I talk about my net worth all the time, so I'm pretty open about it. But if you don't, like,
I'm good.
Share that as openly.
So you're asking how much net worth I have?
Yeah, basically, like how much, like not, it's like basically if you like all the stuff that you would be willing to sell. Like, obviously, if you have certain items that, like, basically, like how much, like, I don't want to say liquidity, but like basically like cash and cash equivalents, basically, is what I'm getting at. Like silver or things that you could like very quickly sell for silver. If like, I don't know, your mom was
somebody trying to make a play on me, estimating my liquidity. Hello.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, so there are certain things that I could sell that I don't want to sell because I'm assuming they will gain in value, right? And there are certain things I've been trying to sell for a while that actually went down in value a little bit. For example, and a different layer is the labor islands as well. A lot of my net worth for a while was just tier 8 islands. Like,
Wow.
I think if I pull this up, I have more than 50 like max level tier 8 islands in Carleon. That's guild islands and like personal islands on top. So that's, I forget how much it is, but that's like 40, 50 billion, maybe more.
It's just so you're. I assume those have been there for a while. Then, like
these have
pre Lands Awakened nerf
oh yeah,
to journals.
oh yeah. Like that's how I made my money. Like I
Yeah,
made my money.
yeah, that's the same way as like as far as I know, like Syndic, Melithrill, all those guys, the ones that have like hundreds of millions of like resource invest into buildings. Like I think Melithrill, looking at his account, is like 60, 70 billion or whatever, just invested in buildings and stuff like that. I've noticed all the like old players, that's what like all of their silver is.
I mean, that
I
was the
never
meta,
understood
right?
it when I started playing. I was like, why would you
that was
do
a meta for 2-3 years until the labor nerf. Basically, just get as many islands with labors on them as possible. Like that was the scaling.
Well, I noticed because like before the journal nerf, you were getting like 80-85% of the mats back from the journal if you fed them, right? So you basically, maybe it wasn't that high. It was like, maybe it was closer to 75. But like basically if you like, I know a lot of people, what they did was they would just feed labors in Carleon and then focus craft with those mats. And between spending focus and feeding the journal, they would basically get all the mats back. And they could just like cycle that.
Not
I don't know if
quite.
that's exactly what you were doing.
Not quite that way, but basically, if you account, so if you translate the resource return rate from a journal, like so you have your regular resource return rate from the building, then on top of that you have the focus, and then on top of that you can sort of equate a journal to another additional resource return rate, right? I think on the highest levels, the additional resource return rate you got from using tier 7, I think 7.1, 8.1, 7.2, that kind of range. Mostly 0.1 was the highest, was like an additional 20-30% resource return rate, just from using journals. And I think that got cut down to like, I don't know, correct me chat, but like 10% or something.
That's about what it is for. I don't know about crafting journals. It's about 12% for tinkerers. So I'm sure it's a little higher for crafting, but
yeah, and that was like way
low.
higher before.
Yeah,
right?
It's very low now.
But that's a lot of where my like asset value is. And I also do have like 40 accounts, right? With like mostly backcrafters. Which the coolest thing is about these is that these were running for like 2 years on premium, and the bag is the lowest thing that needs learning points, right? So it's the cheapest one to advance to max out. Meaning it only has 2.
Okay, yeah, fair, right.
So that means,
I mean, capes would be less.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, but the bags have a higher profit margin, I've noticed. Because it's like,
I mean, it's sort of the same thing, right? Whether it's 1 or 2 nodes, it's a similar thing. And at the time, satchels didn't exist, so the whole node didn't exist about satchels. So it was just 1 node.
Gotcha.
But what that does is that you had premium accounts running for 2 years that give you learning points while being maxed out in max efficiency. So I have like 40 alts right now that have like more than 15,000 learning points, right? Which is another layer on top of just using max efficiency. You're also getting learning points, which is like granted like a 2-year strategy, but that's another layer. I don't know if you've ever thought about that.
No, I have actually. That was my main plan to do with leather is right. I was planning on making more leather accounts, but the Zeldris and all them like abandoning Martlock and dropping the taxes down to like 300 kind of rinsed all of my profit margin on non-focus refining hides. So I have about 60 leather refining accounts, and then my plan was to just match that with cloth and then do something like that, like just focus crafting, capes, bags, satchels, whatever. They're very good. It's just because basically I don't want to craft in a black zone. Like it's not that crafting in the black zone's bad. I'm just kind of like I don't want to add that layer of complexity as far as getting how to get resources out there safely. Because like in cities, I can just haul mammoths all day long and not worry about it, right? So the scaling is much better than trying to figure out, okay, how do I need guards to protect these mammoths? We need a good road, stuff like that. I'd rather just abandon that complexity for the simplicity. And something like making capes, like yes, there's Brazilian, but
how do you get stuff into Brazilian properly?
Brazilian, like, you can just walk right in through the yellow zone mist. Getting it out is the hard part. You can actually just walk it in with a mammoth, and they added it so you can teleport out now. So you can just teleport the mammoth out of Brazilian.
Did you math out what you're paying for the teleport out, like percentage wise?
It's just two cities.
Like, does that translate into a better return?
Do you mean like
bonus?
Teleporting the capes out?
Yeah.
No, you don't teleport the capes out. You can actually get out of Brazilian 100% safely. Basically, you just enter the yellow zone mist in Brazilian until you find a unstable road, and the unstable roads have a like 15% chance to take you to a yellow or blue zone. So you can literally just sit there going into like a yellow zone mist from Brazilian with like a mammoth full of capes, and just if it doesn't have an unstable road, just leave and just keep doing that until you find an unstable road that takes you to the safe zone. So
but
you can actually
the unstable road would put you into an Ava road, right? Which is full PvP.
As far as I know, the unstable roads that you find in the mist themselves, I don't know if you're talking about the unstable road like in Brazilian.
No. So you're going Brazilian into like tier 6 solo non-lethal, right? And then from there through a portal. But that unstable road should take you to an Ava road, which is lethal. No? Am I wrong, Chad?
I haven't personally done it.
Right.
From what I've heard from other people, it just spits you out into the zone as if you were like leaving the mist. I could be wrong about that. No, I'm getting a lot of no's. I'm getting a lot of no's, so I'm definitely wrong.
Okay. So I mean, the way to circumvent all that jazz is again have friends who scout for you, right? But then we're getting into sketchy territory. But basically, you could try and party up and sort of scout the unstable roads.
They're saying
from Brazilian.
I was actually doubly wrong. There's like 4 people in chat saying that it does. The unstable road in the mist will just spit you out into the zone itself. If you can't see it on the map, but if you go to the unstable road in the mist and hover over it, it will tell you what zone it's going to put you into. So you basically just go over there and hover over it, and it'll put you into a like. You don't even have to go through the unstable road in the mist. You just hover over it, see if it's a yellow zone. If it's not, then you A out, or not A out, but run back to Brazilian and repeat. There's a YouTube video on Reddit that like pointed me to this. It had like 50 views, like nobody had seen it. But
send that to me, because I was under the impression that if you go into a unstable portal from a mist zone, then you always end up in an Avalonian road, which is always lethal. But I didn't think that you could go from a safe zone mists to a safe zone directly, because then it becomes too easy. But I feel like it's awkward. But okay.
From what I've heard, people have been doing that. It's very time consuming though. It's not like a quick process.
You're right. Right.
People have said it's taken them upwards of like 3 hours to find a safe one to leave from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
the chance of you getting an unstable road in a yellow mist is fairly low as it is, because as far as I know, the yellow mists only have like 1 or 2 like. Basically, the yellow zone mist or the unstable portal counts as like one of the like, I guess I don't know what you'd call it, like the bonuses or like the basically like areas that spawn. You can get like the ore mining areas, the stone gathering areas, like the crystal spiders, chests, whatever. It counts as one of those, and there's not very many of those in the yellow ones. So the chance of you actually getting an unstable road in the port in a yellow zone mist is fairly rare. And on top of that, like I said, there's a fairly small chance that it even puts you into a yellow zone to begin with. And you have every time you go into a mist and there isn't the unstable, you have to then like wait 5 minutes basically.
Okay, well I guess that discounts that strategy then,
Yeah, it discounts that strategy unless you're doing it in like incredibly high tier. Like if you're hauling like 500 million capes, then yeah, it might be worth waiting because you might profit a couple 100 million. But on top of that, the main reason why I've been afraid to do it is because yes, it's a yellow zone, but if you're doing capes and somebody comes and downs you in the yellow zone, like that, you're still gonna be hit with like a massive repair bill to fix all that stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know if it probably wouldn't outweigh if you were doing like high tier capes, but that was just a side thing. Basically, what I was saying is like if I focus craft capes, I don't have to compete with the black zone hideouts because there isn't really a bonus to capes there.
So you're saying, wait, Brazilian is just bags, or is it bags and capes?
I think it's bags, capes, potions, I believe, are the three.
Okay. Because I know bags, I forgot whether or not it's capes as well.
Yeah. I honestly expected capes to become a lot more profitable than they did, just the simple fact that they took the cape bonus out of Carleon, like where the black market is, like where the majority of the capes get sold. So I was like, oh, capes might be really good. I haven't really noticed a huge jump in profitability, but
I haven't looked at capes and bags markets for a long time. I've been sort of trying to like zone in on this whole like the complete food chain, where you go from raw resources to refined resources to the crafted goods and then to the black market, because I think some of the profit, if not a lot of the profit nowadays, is avoiding market tax.
Yeah, 100%.
And so
it goes back to the thing, like if somebody's buying it from you, they're probably making more silver. Yeah. And like if you're selling refined material to somebody and they're buying it from you, they're probably crafting it and selling it to the black market. So you could just bypass that person taking a margin cut from you.
I'm still looking for somebody who can beat like some of the bigger transport services, but I feel like that's like what I see in terms of quotes is what, like 8% for getting it from the Royal City to Carleon, like 8% of market. What is
8% of like 8% of the estimated market value basically of the item. The ones that I've seen, they do like 800. They do like 8% of the inventory or like X amount of silver per kilogram, whichever's higher.
I mean, you did do the math and you decide that 8% is your margin and you want that yourself? Or because I mean, in theory, you could just say, okay, here, deal with 2 billion worth of tier 5 boots from me, please.
Yeah. Literally, they'll just charge whatever. Like, as far as I know, you don't like. They'll just the ones that I've seen, they just charge you whichever's higher, regardless. Like, you can give them 2 billion boots, but they'll do the math. And if the kilogram equation, it's like 750,000 per like 100,000 kilograms or something like that. And if they do the math and that comes out to be higher, then they're going to charge you based on the weight, not based off of the estimated market value.
Right.
But, I mean, that's actually where I'm at right now too. Is like scaling and making more refined resources is fairly limited. Where like I basically have like not infinite scaling, but I could massively scale making alts to like create gear with the mats I'm already making if I had a way to get it to Carleon, and that's exactly where I'm like bottlenecked right now.
Like I looked at I think tier 7. Like I'm basically playing around with the tier 7 fiber market right now, personally, and I like it kind of works out almost to like 60-50 focus, including M services or whatever they're called. I think it's M services, right? Where I don't know. I am going to try that, I think, as sort of my next projects. Just seeing whether or not the black markets eats enough in terms of supply there. And that's what I'm scaling it to. But do you know the structure they have in terms of how many people are doing that and how fast they deliver and stuff? Have you any experience?
They're not fast.
Not fast. Okay.
I was talking to him about it, and he said with real life going on, they can realistically only do like 100,000. Like I asked them if they could do like 100,000 kilograms a week, and they said they even at that quantity, which for me I could give them like 200,000 kilograms a day. So, but I asked them 100,000 kilograms a week, and they said they would be able to do that some weeks, but it depends on like real life. So I was like, well, if they can only do 100,000 sometimes, they're probably not going to be able to do like 1 million a week, right? So that's kind of the brick wall I keep hitting, where it's like, well, like I don't want to just do 100,000, you know, like if I'm gonna do it, I want to actually like scale into it and not just do it as like a side thing that like takes up a bunch of my time but isn't really like a huge
Stream, are you listening? There's a new business opportunity. Buying from rich crafters in mass, like moving stuff from the royal cities to Carleon, literally hundreds of thousands of kilograms a day, which is like if you're charging 5% of market value.
Yeah, I told the stream, I was like, if somebody can move all my mass to Carleon for me, I'll pay you 700 mil a week. I'll pay you 700 million silver a week just for moving the materials. Like literally at the scale of materials that I could make between leather and bars, I could easily pay 700 million silver every single week. But like, it's not even necessarily that nobody wants to do it. It's like it's actually, I think, just very difficult to do like properly. I mean, if you're doing 8%, especially on like low tier stuff, like you're gonna have to haul that on like fairly expensive mounts, like not necessarily a mammoth, but I mean, if you were doing it at my scale, you definitely probably have to do mammoth loads.
I mean, I think what you essentially have to do is you have to have a group of like 4 or 5 people who do scouting, and then you have a bunch of runners on mammoths. I think that's how you'd have to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the only way you could do it at that scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can't just like get like 10 people together and do it on boars. It just won't be fast enough.
No. Like and then I think it's possible, and I do think that some roads, especially if they're fresh and if there's a good day, the risk is fairly low. But for some reason, there's not enough people who have the balls to literally set that up properly.
I've been doing it with my guild recently. Yeah. For the last like 4 or 5 days, we transport to the black market for like an hour a day in a Zerg of like 20 to 30 people. And we do that for like an hour a day. So, I mean, we've done about 6 trips an hour. So you say 6 trips an hour, 120 people, 5 days, like 600 trips. We've had like 4 or 5 people die. Like total across every single trip, we've had like 5 people die. Right. So we have less than a 1%.
Is that a fighting force, or is that just like literally?
No, it's literally just like Zerg, like a group of cockroaches on oxes. And like if you see a red, literally just everybody scatter in different directions so you don't get like chain stunned like together.
Right.
And yeah, we've literally done that in mass, just sprinting 2 zones back and forth. And I mean, if you think about it, like I was trying to scale that up with the guild, because I'm like, well, even if you're transporting like tier 4, 4-1, you're making about 5 mil an hour. So if you can get 30 people doing 5 mil an hour in profit and have less than a 1% casualty rate, then like my biggest thing is like it's 5 million per hour, yes, but it's split across a bunch of people. So I don't know how you'd really monetize that on like a guild level, because like the easiest thing I would think is like you could I could craft the large amounts of resources I'm doing and then like basically pay my guild members to transport it. But
I mean, I think at the end you would make your money from volume, and like leaving most of the profit margin to the people who take the risk, and then you are sort of setting yourself up for a low margin but high volume business. And then the people who actually do the transporting have the issue of having to wait for a good road essentially, and then that happens maybe once, twice a week. And then it's like call to arms and we gotta go move stuff.
That's the main issue, is in order to make that viable, as far as like actually being able to pay your runners a decent amount of silver, I think crafting in the black zone is basically required. You couldn't do that in the city and leave it. Like crafting in the city, even on the low tier stuff, like 5160, you're looking at maybe 10% profit after taxes, and that just doesn't leave you any margin to give them a like inset, like, because I can't pay them like 5% inventory value to transport it. You know what I mean? Like people aren't gonna like. So I mean, you'd have to survive like you'd have to survive like 24 out of 25 trips, or else you'd make a loss, right? Whereas if you craft in the black zone, something like 6070, you could very easily make 50% profit, pay somebody 10% inventory, like 8%, 10% like the other guys or whatever, and leave yourself a huge margin to profit. But then you run into the issue, like you said, where if you're crafting that large amount of resource in the black market, the black zone, you basically have to have a good road. And these are all the bottlenecks that I've just been like basically slamming my head against for the last like 3 months, as far as I want to craft, but those are the difficulties for sure. As far as doing it in-house is incredibly complicated and time consuming. And apparently it's everybody else feels the same way because there's not anybody that does it at scale.
I don't know. You said that 5% wouldn't be enough. Like the thing is, if you don't have to deal with collateral, then 2, 3, 4, 5% might be enough. I don't. You found that people just don't think that's good.
Well, I just I don't know. You could work it out maybe if you like basically insure deaths. Like if you do, like I'll give you 5%, but if you die, I'll pay for your mount or something like that, and basically you just take that loss. You definitely could do that if you have good transporters. I mean, if you're doing large amounts of like 6.0, I mean, they might be pushing on an elite board. They might be pushing 20 million per trip, right? So they're pushing 120 million of your 6.0 into the black market every hour. So I mean, 5% of that wouldn't be bad, right? That's 6 million an hour. So that would be good, but when you work on low margins like that, you basically like you can't manage very much risk. My problem is more just like finding a big enough group of people that would be willing to work for that I trust. Not necessarily trust, but just like you have to be of a certain caliber player to survive 24 of your 25 trips, right? And like they don't necessarily have to survive all of it, but like if I'm flipping the bill for their death, like I'm basically taking all of their incentive out to act.
Right. Now, I mean, in that sense, you would have to have an agreement where you're essentially selling it at the Royal, and then say, okay, this is yours now, and if you lose it, then it's your problem. And that's why you would make like 5% margin or something. I mean,
you could have them. Yeah, for sure you could, or you can even do like half and half or something, or like, or you're saying do collateralize it for 5% or don't?
I mean, basically, for you, the easiest thing I think would be because you're dealing with such big volume that you just have like wholesale prices, if that makes sense. And all of the markup on whatever is after that is on their side. And then, of course, you have some sort of business relationship where you can sort of coordinate a little bit and, change the output of what you're producing based on what the market actually eats. So you're, helping each other.
Yeah, that's honestly, you're describing like exactly what I would like to do with this guild. It's just it does become like a massive time investment and like
I think you're just bottlenecked, right? The end game for big crafters, the end game for big refiners is essentially how much time you have to click that green bar and how many alts you can run at the same time, and then how much inventory management you do. And then the rest is actually managing people.
Yeah, as a side note, I spend way too much time on inventory management.
Yeah.
Just, I probably spend 5 hours a day just like moving things around cities. Not even necessarily like transporting between cities, just moving things from like the marketplace to the island, and then placing buy orders, buying stuff off the market and stuff like that. That is a huge room for time saved for me. But I don't know, the biggest thing, like back to what I said before, like as far as like the like basically just kind of like taking over an entire market and doing that in city. Like I feel like there are I mean, I'd love to talk to you afterwards about it, because I mean, if you get in with 2 people, the risk is very low. Especially, I don't know how much profit you make per month, but like if you get in with 2 people, I'm probably making enough per month that it's like 1 month's profit
per trip, or what do you think?
No, I mean like basically like the upfront risk of like capital loss is probably not even like a month. Like I'm making 3 billion, I would say max loss probably like 2 bill. So like I'm just now getting to the point where I have enough net worth and enough profit that I'm nearing the point where I could do it myself, but that's not necessarily I mean, doing it myself is never like the best option.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I mean, I think maybe that we should do some proper advertising again. It's like, hey guys, we we kind of need somebody who does this on a big scale, and there is plenty of crafters in the game who can supply you with a like overwhelming supply where you can probably get about 8 to maybe even 10% on the current sales price on the black market for gear, right? So if you look at tier 6, tier 7 gear, and you take 10% of that and you sort of work that out with the kilogram, and then you look at the average you can move, each time, and then you scale it up per hour. There is potentially infinite supply that you can just get at that price point.
Yeah. The time, even if you had like 20 people, I still think time would be your bottleneck.
Yeah,
not market for sure. There's basically infinite room to make profit with. I mean, I was talking about the black market before, and I was adding up like the amount of silver like the black market buys on items, and kind of just like I didn't take all of them. I kind of just added up like six items on the black market, and kind of like took like a low ball estimate of like how many of those items bought and like scaled it across all the items on the black market. And I literally like gave up counting at like 60 billion silver a day. Like in items. Like the black market is pumping easily like trillions of silver per month of new silver into the game. And obviously like there is silver leaving the game, but I mean if you imagine even if the black market was only doing 1 trillion silver per day, like the game has been around for a long time. That is a lot of silver that has come into the game, and still plenty coming in now. So the black market, like, I don't know, I feel like there's enough, maybe not in the long term. Like, I think that something like that still needs to be scaled, but I don't even necessarily know. Like, there are definitely markets in the game that you wouldn't even have to do the black market with. You could just capture in the royals and make a lot given an amount of time, just because, I mean, like I said, like, if you just the Royal City market, not counting the discords and everything, is like 900 billion a month, whatever, like 30 billion silver a day for leather, right? Like just to compare that, like if you could find a way to capture the entire leather market at like 10% profit, right? You're making 3 billion profit per day just off of one market in the game.
Yeah.
Right. So if like there are definitely markets in the game that are plenty big to make insane amounts of silver per day if you have like the capital to basically set it up. And like I said, like if you were doing something like that, for example, like the sheer amount of mats you would have to move to come anywhere near matching market demand, like mammoths and mammoths and mammoths an hour just funneling into your refining. So I don't think it'd be like insanely tight. Like it wouldn't be like you're like putting in like 18-hour days like refining resources. Like there's plenty of ways to speed it up, or you can have extra refiners helping out. But
I think the logistics around that is the tricky challenge. And
yeah, but I think it's easier to do that just because you can do it through the safe zone, right? Like you can basically get anybody with a mammoth. Like, hey, I want resources for this price. If you bring them to me, I will pay. Like I'll buy this resource at 1,000 silver. Whatever price you buy it at, I will buy it at 1,000 silver. You keep the price difference. And you can do that with like anybody with a mammoth, right? Because there's no risk. Like I think basically anybody will make that trade, or you can just say like I'll pay you 4 million silver an hour to haul the resources that I have in this chest to this chest. You give me 100 million silver as collateral, which I've had plenty of people do that for. I probably have 4 or 5 people right now with mammoths that would do that like at a pen drop to transport. To transport hundreds of thousands of kilograms of raw material for me if I asked. There's literally like 2 people in chat right now that were actually asking me if I needed material transported. So the people for that is much easier because people can just turn on Netflix or whatever, just zone out and transport resources and make like 3 mil an hour, right? So compared to the red zone transporting to the black market, that's like a cakewalk for most people.
If only we had a way to like put that on like the Guild Island without that stupid market tax.
Yeah, I was actually thinking I would love to just be able to like set up a guild island with a market on it and just place a bunch of buy orders and be like, just sell it to me. I'm going to get off for the day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. Because especially with like refining, you're dealing with such small, like 10-15% margins. Like you don't want to be spending 6.5% in tax.
Twice. Yeah.
Yeah. Twice when you buy the raw material, and then like obviously the person buying it paid tax, you're paying tax to buy the raw material from him, and then you're paying tax to sell it. Yeah. if they, I wish they set it up to where you could like, EVE Online has it to where like if a alliance builds their own market, they set the tax of that market on like a variable scale. So like you could set like, it would definitely cause problems where people would like set up big markets on the island to like undercut the city's tax or whatever, and then that'd be a whole another problem on its own. But being able to set up like, even if it was like only members of your guild are allowed to use the market or whatever, but you could set the tax to like whatever you wanted on that market. Something like that would be beneficial.
I do agree. That's been a dream to see come through for me as well for a long time, because I've like this inventory management with the proper convenience is super hard to pull off. I mean, you have guild chests, you have regular chests, you kind of have a little bit of money management with the buildings, right? That is possible, but it all relies so much on trust, and you're sort of hard capped at like 50 mil, 100 mil with
exactly. Yeah, 100 mil is about where my cap usually runs out, to where they don't have the collateral, and you're basically like relying on trust with something like that is very hard. Like, transport contracts would be the number one thing that I think would.
That's why I think the way I would go is try to just sell it to people directly. Like find a very easy way to ideally you have the market prices mapped out, right? And you know, okay, if I sell this, you can expect that price in the black market, and you can do that with confidence. And then you take 2%, 3% on providing that, and the rest of the 10% profit on that trip is then on a transporter that you help provide. But it's a fairly simple thing for people to do, where they know, if I deal with Doublebacknv, then I get 10% if I move this, right? And that seems easy and straightforward, but for some reason it also seems hard to pull off. I don't know.
I think that, like I said, the biggest thing for me, it would just be like, if I would say I need a bunch of raw material moved to Thetford, right? Because I do most of my refining at Thetford. I think the easiest thing to do it without dealing with collateral, without dealing with any of that stuff, is you find people that will transport for you and have a okay amount of silver. And you basically just pick, like you said, like you find like, okay, what price can I sell this bar for? What price would I need to buy the ore for to make a 15% profit? And say, like I said, simple math, it's 1,000 silver. And you just tell them straight up, like, I will buy any amount of this. You basically just send them a list, like, here's the ore that I need, here's the price that I will pay, bring as much of it to me as you can. And they just keep any price difference from the market as their transport fee. They don't have to, like, you don't trade the items to them. There's no collateral necessary. They just bring it all. And that kills two birds with one stone, because one, you don't have to transport it, and two, like I said, like the vast majority of my time is spent by ordering the material and in that stupid completed transaction screen, taking it off the market. So you kill two birds with one stone, as far as you don't have to transport it and you don't have to take it off the market.
Do you think you have a big enough like channel or voice to get that message out, where you just tell people, hey guys, I am buying this?
I definitely for sure have 2 or 3 people with a mammoth that have 100 to 200 million silver that would do that. But as far as like how many people, I mean, I could definitely get people to transport mammoths, no problem. The collateral part is the biggest issue, but that is one benefit of ore, is that ore or raw material in general is much heavier. So they don't need as much collateral. Like you could fill 4 mammoths with 50 million worth of material if it's lower tier stuff, right? So they don't need a ton of collateral to do a lot of trips.
I'm still afraid of the overhead though, with managing collateral for people. I mean, you're kind of a public personality, right? And I also have a little bit of pull in that sense, where people are okay or more okay to just trust you with the collateral as well, right? Because that whole thing works the other way too, right? What if you're building this whole thing to collect collateral and then you dip out, right? That's
No, I mean, I'm fairly open with the people that, like, I'm fairly open not just with the people that invest silver in me, but everyone else, just to be transparent. Like, hey, I have this guy's silver. If I run off with it, like, hold me accountable. Because right now one guy just the other day loaned me like 4.5 billion. I have 200 million from a guy from the stream from like a year ago that I'm still holding on to for him. Like, honestly, I probably have like 6 billion silver loaned to me that I'm like transparent with the majority of people. Some guy just today literally said, like, hey, I'm quitting the game. Use this to like help out the guild, and he just gave me his mammoth. right? So like, I feel like I have a pretty decent.
No, of course, I wasn't trying to say
No,
that.
no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not saying. No, I just mean like I think
I'm
a
building the
reputation like
theoretical
that can be
case,
built,
right?
for
Where
sure.
somebody who is new to the game or who has like developed on their own, and they are at the level where they barely have a mammoth, and they kind of want to, look at transporting maybe. Then for them, potentially taking a risk is also scary, right? So
Yeah,
that
yeah, I
needs
agree.
to work both ways.
I don't think you need that many mammoths necessarily. I don't. You definitely don't need like. I don't think you would need like 50 people doing it, or like even like 25 people. I think if you had like 5 to 10 like good transporters that played actively, that would be plenty. And I think finding that amount of players without like, I don't think you necessarily need like new players. I think there's enough mid-range mammoths that have 50 to 100 million silver that would be willing to take that on. And plus, like if somebody does that for you, like you don't even necessarily need to have a bunch of people that have like low amounts of liquidity, because I mean if one person transports for you for like 6 hours, right? I mean you probably just paid them like 20 million, right? So they might go within a week of transporting for you, they might go from 100 mil liquidity, like, hey, I have like 200 million now, like can I transport higher tier stuff for more profit? That's actually how I pay my transporters. I pay them by the kilogram. So basically, like for example, like if you're hauling like tier 4 for very low liquidity, like I will let you transport the tier 4, but you won't be able to fill an entire mammoth. Like a mammoth of tier 4 only fills like 60%, so you're only going to be making like this amount of silver. Whereas if you're transporting like tier 7 with like the proper ore gathering backpack with a bunch of collateral, then you might like double your silver per hour, right? So I kind of I that's the main way that I've incentivized my transporters to basically just provide more collateral. And I've found stuff
could you
like
try
that
and find a way and deal with that through chest logs, where basically because I was thinking about that a while back, where you set up a system where you have 2 guild islands and you provide the stuff that you need moved into a box, and then you basically deal with, okay, this came out of this chest log and this is into this chest log on this other island, and that's how I pay you essentially.
Yeah, that's basically exactly what I do. I have one chest where I have one tab of a guild chest that I put all of it in, and I take a screenshot of it so I know like how many kilograms it is and like all the items that I have in it. And then I basically just they pay me the collateral. I give them user access to that tab, and I say, okay, I want it in this tab on this island, and I just give them supplier to that tab, and they throw it all in that tab.
Right.
And then I can go there, check the log, like see that, or I mean, for the most part, you can see like estimated market value is the exact same, kilograms is the exact same. It'd be hard to, like, at the end of the day, like, I don't think people are going to go out of their way to like trade in an item for another item or whatever and me not notice. And I can just scroll down, make sure that like it's all ore or whatever. Like, it's not that deep. No. And then I just, if they want to transport more, then they can just like leave their collateral as a deposit, and I can just say, okay, cool. I go fill up another guild tab for them, give them access to that, and like go hard.
Yeah.
And it's fairly easy to do that, because a guild, especially if it's a 2-city transport, like if they're transporting from Bridgewatch to Thetford, it takes a long time to go through a guild tab on a mammoth. So
did you math out the profit there? Like if somebody were to move a full guild tab of stuff from like a 1-city way, like how many trips that is, how many kilograms and stuff, how much you'd have to pay for that? I didn't, because it seems like you did. That's why I'm asking.
I haven't done like a full guild tab. I've done like basically per hour. I'm like, if you do this at an efficient rate with the gathering backpack and a pork pie, you can expect to make between 3.5 and 4 million per hour. And that's just basically what I tell people, as far as and I just tell them like that'll be variable depending on how much collateral you give me, because like if you give me a low amount of collateral, like I can still give you a full guild chest, but it's just not going to be as heavy of stuff.
Right, so, of course.
People know that up ahead of time.
How much collateral do you need to minimum?
It depends on the resource. Like hide is way more expensive than ore, but usually like 50 million, and I can fill a tab of like tier 4, 4-1, stuff like that for them. Maybe not fill the entire guild tab, but give them like a few hours work, basically.
That's where I see the tricky part is. Like people who need that kind of money and need that silver per hour where it's profitable for them, kind of don't have the 50 million. Or do you find that
you can find a couple that do, but I do agree that is the main thing. It's like that's why I don't have people, back to what I was harping on before, that's why I don't have people transport my finished product. It's like the type of person that has the collateral to transport finished product isn't going to be doing that.
Yeah.
But as a side note, the amount of like low tier stuff I need is way high. Like I need way more like tier 4 than I need, or wait, not necessarily tier 4, but I need like way more like 5.1 delivered than I need like 7.1, right? Because it's just more common resource. So the type of resource that they're transporting and the amount of collateral they need kind of lines up to the point where the vast majority of the stuff that I don't want to transport, like 5.0, 4.1, 5.1, stuff like that, is stuff that they can afford to collateralize. Whereas the stuff that's like 7.0, 7.1, like 100 million silver inventories, I can just do that myself. And in the future, maybe that becomes an issue, but I don't see it being terrible yet.
What a weird business. Like, we're talking about hundreds of millions of tier 3 and tier 4, tier 5, moving stuff from cities to cities.
But like I said, the transporting is the hard part. If you can get somebody, like, I was probably making, if you actually like average it out to like refining time, moving tier 3 and like setting up the guild tabs, I was probably making like 15 million silver an hour when I owned all of Thetford, just refining like tier 3 and tier 4. Just simply because I took out the most time. Like, you can go through an entire guild tab of like tier 3 refining very, very quickly, but transporting an entire guild tab of tier 3 is very time consuming for compared to the amount of silver. And I mean, 15 million an hour, that's not bad. I could just sit there. Like, I play like 12, 14 hours a day. I can sit there and burn 100 million silver in tier 3
right
in whatever time. And I do that. I have like 4 or 5 guild tabs just full of like 4.0 and 5.0 still from then, like 3 months ago, just because I just stocked up on it. And just I need to refine some 5.0. I have a bunch of 4.0 bars. I need to refine some 6.0. I have a bunch of 5.0 bars. Just rather than selling it, that's just easier for me. And the resource price is so stable that I'm not worried about like a 50% drop in price, like wiping out my profit from it.
You got me thinking, like, do we really now set up a bunch of guild islands that have like 10 guild tabs, and then each of the guild tabs has one refine or one transporter assigned to it?
Yeah, that's my plan. Yeah, just name the guild tab after the transporter, and they have their set drop off point, and then I can have like a drop off island in the town, and I can pull from there and refine it, and then as I refine it, I throw it into like my like finished product guild island or whatever, something like that, and just kind of like set up a kind of supply chain that way. And working out the kinks of like how they choose, like, or like whether I buy the resources and they bring my bot resources, or they buy the resources and just bring it to me for a set price. Like, all that is like extra on top of it. That, like, the biggest thing is just setting up a situation where you can take advantage of that, because with the current tax, like super low taxes in town, like it's not an option. Like, you can't buy enough profitable mats for that to ever matter, because there's just not. Yeah, I mean, like, when the taxes were fixed in Thetford, even not counting, like, ignore the fact that like I had like that arbitrage difference between, like, because I didn't have to pay the tax and everybody else did. Even ignoring that, like, say I did have to pay the tax, I could profitably refine 6.0, 6.1, 5.1, 7.0. Like, basically every single tier just becomes way more profitable on high taxes, regardless of if you're a plot owner or not. So
awkward.
Yeah, I try to tell people that, and they actually look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, obviously you would say that, you're a plot owner. It's like,
yeah,
it's like, I mean, yes, kind of, but that doesn't explain why I paid Zeldris 2.5 billion silver in plot taxes in the last 2 months, refining hide on their 4,000 tax. Because I don't know, a lot of people are like, I'm not going to refine there because that's ridiculous. They shouldn't charge that much. It's like, all right, you go sit in the corner and not refine. I'm going to go get my 30% profit refining on their ridiculously high tax. Thank you. You know.
Yeah, that the whole taxes and station taxes is it's a whole different kind of worms.
Yeah, people do not like that at all. I realize I got banned. As soon as I bought Thetford, I got banned from Beast 1K's stream over that, I assume.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he literally banned me from his stream because I bought all of Thetford. I'm not even kidding.
I don't know about that. I don't know if
that's literally, like, I don't know if it was him. I'm not saying it was him, but I'm banned from his stream. Like, it could have been like an upset mod or whatever. I'm not throwing him under the bus. It could have been anyone. Because I actually asked another streamer about it, and it wasn't Beast that banned me. It was somebody else. So
no, the competition is out there. The competition is out there, and I mean, I'm always a friend of in the end, it's a game, right? In the end, my like super removed goal from all of this is basically just either learning stuff or having fun, right? And for some reason, I have a lot of fun learning stuff about virtual economies and like how games sort of do that setup in a good way. And Albion has a lot of, it's not super crazy complicated mechanics where it's easy enough to sort of be able to grasp the math if you try, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other games, other things like real life economy math is like way out of my league.
Yeah, you just don't have the data.
No.
As well.
But Albion is simple enough where it's fun to figure out what's going on, and then you have the power to actually influence some of the levers, and that is really cool. And
yeah, and you can immediately see your impact. Like I said, you have like fairly transparent data as far as how is the market reacting and how am I affecting said reaction for sure, which you just don't like I say it all the time. Like a joke, I've had people say like, why don't you just do this? Like, why don't you just work this like do this in real life or whatever? It's like, what do you mean like do this? It's like I can't like make alts in real life. I can't look at a market and see like the price, like the historic like price average of all these items in this market or like all this stuff. Like just the transparency of data and the fact that it's a game does. I don't know. It does feel like something you can like beat, I suppose. Like, there is that aspect of like figuring it out and like taking advantage of what you figure out to surpass others.
I mean, at the end, like if you properly scale this, later on you're actually management, right? You figure out the thing, and then you are the guy who sets up the chest permissions and the you're moving the stuff from the market to the chests, and that's what you would do in real life at the end. And I don't know how much fun that is then at the end, but.
No, I mean, there's also just the cool part. Like, if you're the person that figures that out, like you said, like I don't want to say it's like creating jobs because that sounds like weird, but like if you figure out how to like profit off that market, or whatever, talking about those transports, like you could pay like 5 or 10 people like 3 million, like way more silver than they'd make doing like other content that they might not want to do or whatever, and you could pay them, tens of millions of silver a day to move whatever, and it's not. I mean, it's not necessarily like they do that like full time, but you just give like my whole thing with like YouTube is basically just like teaching you how to make silver so that you don't have to go like grind dungeons for 30 hours a month to pay for your premium, right? Like, I mean, saving other people time.
In the end, you're a different avenue of providing like social interaction profits to people, where there is a game way to get profits where it's just smashing mobs, and then there's this whole guild layer of the game that is in many situations more profitable, right? And then it's nice to do that in a public way. And I think if you can do that properly and easy enough for people, where they know, okay, if I deal with this guy, that's how I make a profit. Like pulling that off is really cool. I used to pay people to do my labor journals, so I had it set up in a way where I gave you, I think, like 25% at the end of the profit. But it was enough to have a super good like hourly for the time. And I had, I think, 15 people doing my journals at the max, where
sure,
I just had too many islands that I couldn't literally click that much. But I was very happy to just give that away because these guys made their premium and I still made like.
That's it. That's it. Like there are certain things like, one question that kind of baffled me, and I don't remember who exactly asked it yesterday, and it like not to like throw them under the bus or anything, but it was a super weird question to me because I'm basically right now I have people like I was like in the guild, like if you want to like loan me some of the silver that you make off the transports, like feel free, like you don't have to be in the guild or anything, but you can just deposit into the guild bank and I'll pay you guys 5% on the guild bank, like for being a member of the guild or whatever and helping me out with liquidity. And one guy is like, wait, if you're not making anything from the guild and you're paying us interest, like how do you gain anything from that? And it was like that question like baffled me, but it's like the same mindset where like I only have so much silver that I can make profit with. Yours was more time, but mine, in this example, it's capital. But it's like I can make more than 5% off that cap. It's about, like to me, it's just like a bank, right? Like a bank doesn't like a bank loans somebody, or somebody takes a loan from a bank. They're not doing that because they love the bank and want to pay the bank interest, right? It's because they can make more off that loan. It's the same thing with you. Like, you're not necessarily paying those people to fill your journals out of the kindness of your heart because you want to like give them a bunch of silver.
I'm making money
like,
too. Yeah.
Yeah, you're making money too. Yeah, exactly. Like, everybody can benefit in a situation. Like, you're making more silver than you would have otherwise because you can't feed that many journals. And it's like the same thing with me. Like, I'm taking the loans from you guys because I can make, like, I don't have enough silver right now to like basically make all the accounts I'm making and like liquid like all those expensive resources I was refining or whatever like that. And plus, I just like 5% isn't that big, so 5% a month in Albion's fairly simple. At least maybe when I'm at like 100 billion, I'll feel differently. But for now, making 5% is not terribly hard per month.
I have to give you a little heads up. I have to head out in about 10-15 minutes. Because we do have some other Albion TV stuff going on tonight. But just a heads up that so we don't go into another of these like super deep rabbit holes. I think we talked about really cool stuff today that you don't get to talk about with a lot of people in the game, I feel like.
Yeah, there's like people see like where like obviously I share like my journey like daily like streaming Albion or whatever, but nobody really sees the like thousands of hours that go into it, right?
Yeah.
And there's only a certain number of people that like, yes, like people in my Discord like answer questions all the time for me because like they know what I would say, right? But at the end of the day, like you have to, in order to actually understand like why something is that way, you kind of have to like put in that time to like make that silver. And I tell people that all the time. Like, people are like, oh, how do I get a mammoth quickly? It's like, you really don't get it quickly. Like, you wouldn't want to get a mammoth quickly. You wouldn't know how to use it if you got the mammoth quickly, right?
Like some of the Albion stuff, especially getting started, is somehow finding that upfront investment to get that ball rolling. And I think, I mean, that's a monetization strategy I've like, right? That's okay. Yeah. Like if you have to fork out $20-$50 to get the ball rolling, and then you sort of, if you're consistent, then you quote unquote play for free, then that's fine with me. But for new players, that's often something that they're like, well, I'm supposed to be able to play the game immediately for free. And okay, how do I do that, right? And then it is possible, but I think the more obvious some of these ways are, like some of these might get nerfed, I feel like. But this whole social thing, right? You can't really nerf the social thing, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you aren't at the level of like making silver, knowing how or capital wise or just anything like that. So it's like you can like basically piggyback off somebody else. It's like, hey, I have this work that you could do. I don't have the time for it. I can pay you X amount of silver. And like you can very easily like I said, like I can very easily pay somebody like 3-4 million an hour to transport for me. But like 3 to 4 million per hour. Well, granted that's with a mammoth, so that's not as early, but like for a lot of people, like especially if they like just got their mammoth, they only have like 3 million silver or whatever, and they don't know what to do. Like getting something like that is like way better than anybody could make off of their own, or just like I guess the knowledge in general. But
I think we should work on trying to set something like that up, because I think a lot of people would be very happy to do that. And like safe zone transporting is one thing, but the black zone is more for advanced stuff.
Yeah.
But you might have the voice or the option to actually pull it off the capital and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah. The biggest thing is working at the capital. I mean, I could like honestly at this point with the East server coming out, I'm probably gonna focus on that server just a little bit, just for like the content side of it more. So and obviously the enjoyment of playing the new server or whatever. But like I said, back to like the biggest question I get in the game is like, hey, I'm a new player. What should I do? And I don't really have any like up-to-date content for that, because at the end of the day, like I don't make a ton of money from making content for the game. Like it's a fairly like niche game or whatever. And so me personally, I'm more like I enjoy making silver or whatever this way. And it's like I can like tell you what to do, but like I don't want to go out back and make like an entire series on like beginning content, because I tried that before and it honestly just feels like a huge waste of time, right? Like going back and making like 200,000 silver an hour, like just as like just as like an informative thing for people. But now with the Asia server, it's like I literally have like the perfect incentive to make that content. So I plan on doing that, but I'd 100% be down with messaging on Discord and like just going over my thought process and a lot of the numbers that I've calculated as far as
I will be super interested
taking advantage of the royal cities. Because I mean between the liquidities that we have and the amount of between the amount of alts I have and like capital and just the amount of time I put into the game, we could very easily. Like I said, you have a big interest in kind of like capturing an entire market, and I think we just basically visibly seeing your effect in the game, and I think we could definitely do that fairly easily.
How about we think about that for a while, and then maybe people might see in the future something develop. One thing before I go that I wanted to ask you,
Right.
your plans for East and specifically beta, since that's happening on Monday. Are you with a group? Are you just doing it yourself? Are you literally just recording that as a solo experiment for YouTube, or do you actually have a group?
I do have a group of players. You might have seen them on the East. I don't know if you go through how much you go through the forums or whatever. The forums
so
for the East server, a guy named Stormlord, he's been making a bunch of posts as far as setting up a guild. And I plan on basically just me and any of the members from my stream or whatever that bought a founder pack to basically just grind silver making on there. And I do plan on, like, it's not as authentic of a series, but I do plan on making videos of it, just going like, here's my plans for the East server, this and that, and just
okay, because
that idea. But honestly, I'm kind of just using it as like a dry run for the East server as far as what works.
It has some different variables, but it's still good.
Yeah.
Have you looked at the dev talk that came out? Because there's a bunch of stuff that's actually restricted in the beta specifically.
Yeah, I did watch it about like the territory restrict. That actually threw me for a loop. My brain's been wondering a lot. My biggest question, I was planning on gathering hide in the beta. Was my main plan, and then I looked at that. I'm like, okay, so I'm like, hide is usually the most valuable resource.
But there's only Martlock as
on the
city.
black market.
Like all of the royal other cities are like
exactly.
locked.
But all the other royal cities are gone. The only city that has a bonus to refining, unless they change something for the beta, the only resource refining bonus is hide. So I'm like, the sheer amount of hide that's going to be in the game compared to the other resources is like insane.
I mean, Martlock doesn't have too many hide biome things around it, though, right?
No, it just has a couple like bridge watch zones, I believe. There's a couple bridge watch zones unlocked, and that's like it. So I don't really know. We'll have to see, but like I don't know. Like that's a completely like unknown as far as like there's gonna be so little hide to gather, but at the same time, it's the only resource that has a refining bonus. So I'm like, I don't know. The economy on the beta is probably gonna make no sense comparing it to the current one, just because of supply to variables. But
how about if you actually need like somebody to scout for you, or maybe vice versa during the beta, hit me up, because I want to play a little bit, but I don't have a group yet. I do have some plans, and when you said Stormlord, I actually know the guy from forever ago, so I was also looking at him a little bit, and I don't know.
As far as I know, he plans on
I mean, he's from Australia, right? So East is like a dream for him.
Yeah. They're starting an entire new guild that doesn't exist on the West server. They're creating a brand new group of players for the East server in particular. He plans on grinding it really hard. I don't know as far as how deep we'll go together on the actual server release, but we plan on grinding a bunch on the East server or on the East beta. And I do plan on playing with him. Playing with them most likely. I mean, the more players that you can get together, just the more variable stuff you can do, especially when it comes to the black market. Because doing something like that, like you said, without scouts or anything like that, if you're literally just transporting the black market solo, it becomes way harder. Yeah.
Hey, I gotta go. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for letting us or letting me hang out with you tonight. I hope you had some fun. And I kind of want to do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd be down. 100%. I mean, if you wanted, like, yes, anytime we could go over, maybe after the East server starts, we can go over first thoughts or something like that, or anything. Or like I said, I'll message you, and if you have any future talks that you want to go over, I'd be happy to do it on or off stream.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, let's do that. I gotta eat dinner, right? And then we have these other streams that are going on. How long are you going to stream?
I'm probably gonna be live for 3 to 5 more hours. Kind of just waiting for
then I'll send you like 50 people from my stream.
All right.
and then we can call it there tonight, and then maybe continue this conversation at some other point in time. I'm very happy that finally somebody is streaming the econ side of things. Somebody is pushing that side of Albion a little bit more into the public eye, because in the past it's been hard, and it's a very secretive circle. Like the way you make money in Albion is by keeping your secrets, and not telling people about it. And I'm somebody who wants to share knowledge as much as possible because I like learning these kind of things. And maybe we can spread that awareness a little bit better. And
I'm down. I mean, I literally, after high school, I completely fell in love with economics, and it's just a really good playground kind of to like just bounce ideas off of other people. I feel like it's just sitting there in your own little circle, or you kind of just get stuck with only one outlook on the game, and that might be a profitable outlook, but I feel like at the end of the day, like you said, silver's silver, and if you're not experiencing the full game, then there's so many, like, there's the amount of stuff that I can learn. I could play this game by myself for 10,000 hours, but it wouldn't even come close to having the thousands of people that come through the stream and point things out or anything else that I may have missed. So it all helps at the end of the day.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna listen back to this later, see what we actually talked about, because I feel like we talked about a lot. And I can do that on your VOD, I suppose, right? If I tune in late, and I can watch that on your VOD. Or maybe
I should. I'm gonna go through. I actually just realized, like, halfway through we were talking, there was like really quiet music in the background. So hopefully, it was very, very quiet. So hopefully Twitch doesn't come in and mute any of it. And if they do, I can just download it from Twitch. And
okay, I think I didn't stream any music during my part of it. So worst case, if you're listening, or if you listen to all of this VOD on Doubleback stream, and you're like, oh shit, there was this one part in the middle where it got cut over, I think it might be up on mine as well. But hey, let's end it there tonight. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a good rest of the day for your streaming stuff, and then let's talk more in the future. And maybe I'll see about the Albion TV stuff, because let's talk about that some other time, because we have some scheduling things to go through. But I'd love to have you on the other channel as well, if we can pull that off, and see how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I will look forward to that.
Okay, then have a good stream, and I'm gonna hop out. Bye bye, guys.
Yep, you as well. Have a good night.